In order to make choices that are best for you, please note that this episode does contain brief mentions of rape.
Welcome to Lit Vibes Only, where we lit the shit out of books we love and hate. I'm Kelsey, the unhinged, diehard romantic and fantasy reader.
And I'm Amanda, the insightful thrill seeker and historical fiction nerd.
Hey.
Welcome. We're so glad you're here. This is our second Lit It or Quit It episode for the wonderful month of March. And we've got one of my favorite books of all time to talk about. So really stoked for that. But as always,
You?
I guess we'll find out. Honestly, nope, you know what? We'll get to that in a second. But before we go down a rabbit hole, if you are not following us on socials, please take a moment and do that. We are on Instagram at litvibesonly_podcast, and then both on YouTube and on TikTok at Lit Vibes Only Podcast. So be sure to go over there to join our larger Lit Vibes Only community, chat with us, watch our videos. We put out a lot of additional fun content. And if you're not a person who is on socials regularly or at all, you can also get in touch with us via our email. It's litvibesonlypodcast@gmail.com. You can shoot us a line, say hey, send us a book recommendation, etc. And if you're looking for another way to connect with us that's a little bit more dynamic and more fun, you can join our book clubs on Fable. We've got a small group of folks, and we're hoping to continue to expand that. And they're all books that are directly connected to these Lit It or Quit It episodes. So you get to vote on the books we're reading. You get to chat with us beforehand. You can make predictions about whether or not you think it's going to be a Lit It or Quit It for Kelsey or I. So I'm at Lit Vibes Only Amanda. Kelsey is Lit Vibes Only Kelsey. So be sure to search us up on Fable, add us, join our book clubs. It's just an additional way to get to know other readers. Yeah, get involved, get to know other readers. And then last but certainly not least, if you still have not rated and reviewed our podcast,
Julia, we're talking to you.
I was literally going to say that. You know who you are. We're not going to call anyone else out.
Anyone else except for her. Just kidding. Also, I need to double check if Cesario has. I actually don't know if he has.
I think he has.
Okay.
I feel like there was like way back. But you know who you are. You know who you are.
Yes.
And we kindly request that you take a moment right now while you're listening to the episode. Once you hear that outro music, hit that 5-star button on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you're listening to this podcast. And then if you have an extra moment, you can write a line or two review on Apple Podcasts, or you can comment on this episode on Spotify. We really appreciate it. Yes, we're in our second year, but we're very much still growing as a podcast. And those ratings and reviews help us so very much.
Yeah.
So please do that.
I was actually, maybe it was yesterday, the day before, I was listening to a parenting podcast. And the only thing that she says at the beginning is actually go download the episode, because I don't download episodes when I go listen to podcasts because it's like, that's wasted space really. And what's the point? But
downloads help.
That is the only way, the only thing, only listens that really count towards our podcast.
Yeah.
Which is really
bizarre.
Unfortunate. Because it's just, we can't really keep track of who's actually listening.
Unless you download.
Only the downloads.
Yeah, it's a weird metric.
You could also do that.
Yes, you could also download it because we can see the downloads every week, but that only gives us a percentage of listeners. And so we know you're out there. We know you're listening. And downloading is a great way for us to keep track of how many ears are listening.
Yeah. Did you see the Wuthering Heights downloads? It's definitely higher than
it is definitely higher. Yeah.
All the other ones, especially in the first week, because we just released it last week. And oh my gosh, what perfect timing. We didn't even plan that exactly, but
we did.
Well, excuse me. But in that specific week, like we planned it for February, but we didn't that specific week.
No, I did, because I knew it was coming out Valentine's Day. That's why I switched my book choice, because I was like, oh, that way it'll come out the Monday after it drops.
Yeah.
And it worked really well. We had a lot of views on our TikTok videos for the trailers. It looks like we've got quite a few downloads as well. Granted, we're recording this in February still, so if you're sitting there thinking like, why are they talking about Wuthering Heights at the end of March? I was like, old news. It's brand new news for us. We actually just saw the movie together with another friend
Wednesday?
on Tuesday. Yeah, we went on Tuesday, this
Okay.
past Tuesday.
Yeah.
And it was exactly what I thought it was going to be, where they just Frankensteined the
Well,
story and made it into something else to make it work as a love story.
but the weird, can it even be called like BDSM? Like, what is that called? That weird
Yeah,
side
where she's like,
story
yeah, where she's chained up. Yeah. There were some
that I
choices
did
made
not suspect. I was like, you suspected that, but no, I get what you're talking about.
that I did
Uh,
not see coming with Isabel and Heathcliff. That was bizarre. And if you've
or
watched
even
the
the
movie, you know what we're
servants.
talking about. Yeah. But I did, the one thing I'll say, not to
Uh,
go on a whole Wuthering Heights tangent, is I liked the artistic direction and like the cinematography. Like it's a
mm-hmm.
very cool film to see, like visually what she did with it. But in
Sure.
terms of the plot and how she altered things to make it work as a love
Mm-hmm.
story, did not appreciate at all. Because it's a great revenge kind of slash horror slash ghost story. And like you could have done
And
that so well. Like you didn't have to sacrifice that to make a good
mm-hmm.
movie.
Yeah.
But those are my thoughts.
Whole
Anyhow,
half of the book is missing in that
literally,
movie. Do
there's
you
like characters missing.
Oh yeah, plot like whole plot lines.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
completely
wild.
changed. Completely changed. But
Wild.
one quick, what is the word I'm looking, housekeeping issue to
Yes.
address is that this is going to be our last month, at least for the foreseeable
For
future,
mm-hmm.
that we're going to be doing episodes every single Monday. So starting in the month of April, we're going to be
Yeah.
shifting to 2 episodes a month. And so we'll just be doing our Lit It or Quit It episodes for y'all, because I know
Mm-hmm.
those are everyone's favorite.
They
So
definitely get the most listens.
they get the most listens. So we're going to be
Mm-hmm.
sticking with those just because, as you know from previous episodes, Kelsey's expecting and lots of things are
Yes.
shifting on our end. So we're going to be
Scaling back.
scaling back. Thank you.
You just did a
Downsizing
Kelseyism.
and scaling back a little bit on our end. So just if you're like, oh my gosh, it's Monday and there's not an episode, it's
Mm-hmm.
just that we're going to be doing every other Monday now. And
Well, only 2 episodes a month.
so for most months, it'll be every other Monday.
Yeah.
For the rare 5 Monday months, it will not be
Yeah.
every other Monday. There'll be an extra empty Monday in there. Yeah. Just wanted to give folks an update before we dove in. I am struggling. I feel like I'm like channeling my inner Kelsey today. I'm like struggling with my words. We're going to dive in to our current
Uh,
reads and then we'll get to
oh.
our review discussion, all that good stuff. So,
I can
Kelsey, what are
start.
you currently reading?
Yeah, so after the Nightingale, I was like, God, I need something light.
That's fair.
So I picked up a romance and I've been wanting to read this one since it came out, which was
Oh.
last summer. Love is a War Song by Duncan.
Oh, yes, Anna Canova.
Yeah, and so I'm in the middle of that one right now.
Okay. How does it compare to the one that you had me read, her other one?
I'm not sure yet. The story is very different,
Okay.
but she still has this way about her writing where she's like highlighting a particular concern or issue that Native peoples face. And yeah, it's been interesting. So I'm curious to see the wrap up of it
Okay.
because the character is not exactly likable or lovable.
Oh, like
The
the
main
FMC or the
character,
MMC?
the FMC. Yeah, I'm
Oh,
curious how she wraps that up.
interesting. Is it like a grumpy sunshine dynamic? Is she like,
No, it's just that some things that she does that
oh,
harms the native community. And yeah, it's interesting.
and
Hmm.
yeah. Okay. Keep us posted. I'm curious.
I will.
What
I
was
will.
I don't know why I'm blanking on the name of the one that you had me read. I can see the
Ember, according to Ember.
According to Ember. I was like, I can literally see the cover in my head. Okay,
Hmm.
according to Ember. Yeah. Okay. I am reading the second book in, I honestly don't know if it's going to be a series. I was looking it up yesterday,
Oh,
but it's the second book in the Vera Wong series by Jesse Q.
oh,
Sutanto. It's Vera Wong's Guide to Snooping on a Dead Man. And this is the second book, the sequel. So I don't know if it's going to be a duology or if there's going to be more, but it's amazing. It's definitely a book you have to listen to an audiobook
mm,
because she does such a good job of capturing the voice of this like feisty, precocious, sassy 60-year-old like Chinese grandma who's out here like solving murders. And I feel like if you listened or if you read the book, I don't think it would resonate as much. And I don't think I would actually like the series as much. It is definitely a book that was like written to be an audiobook, I feel like. And the narrator is so talented. I'm blanking on her name, but it's a great audiobook and definitely going to make a TikTok video about it and put it out there to get more people to listen. It's like a cozy murder mystery, and that's not normally two things you hear together, but it's very feel good.
Okay.
It's like very heartwarming. It's very much about found family. So if that's like a trope, listeners, that you like, you're going to love this book. It's going to make you laugh out loud. It's going to make you tear up. I just love hanging out with Vera. She's one of my favorite like female protagonists
Okay.
ever. So that's what I'm reading and thoroughly enjoying it. I think at this point in the year, which is crazy, I have listened to the same amount of books that I've read.
Oh, wow.
I think roughly, I think that's true.
Yeah.
Because I think I've read 21 books so far this year, and I think I've listened about half and half have been like audiobook and physical book. But anyhow, we are here to talk about one of my all-time favorite books,
Dun, dun, dun.
The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah. This was the first Kristin Hannah book that I read. And it was in that era of time where I was like just getting back into historical fiction as an adult. So this is one of those first books, along with some Geraldine Brooks books. I was like, oh yeah, I love historical fiction. This is my jam. And I remember reading this book and just being blown away. I was so moved. It's about sisterhood. I love books about sisterhood and like badass women. I love World War II era historical fiction. That's my jam. So it just checked all the boxes for me. And it was a long enough book where you really get to follow the stories in detail over a period of time, which I think I needed and wanted. So I liked it for that. And then I wanted Kelsey to read it for all of those reasons. And also because this is an incredibly popular book. This is probably Kristin Hannah's most famous book. It's going to be turned into a movie that's coming out next year with the Fanning sisters. So I know there's a lot of buzz around it as well.
For sure.
And I needed to redeem myself from the women, which is so far has been Kelsey's only experience of Kristin Hannah. And I was like, we can't leave it there. Like Kristin Hannah is so much more and so much better than that book. And the last reason why I chose it is because Kelsey has made it clear on this podcast that she too likes World War II era novels. She did end up reading off the podcast, Codename Helene by Ariel Lahan on her own. I like recommend it. And then she went out of her own like free will and volition and read it and loved it. And there's a lot of, I think, common themes and events happening in this book as well, with like women actively engaging in the war effort, whether it's through being a resistance fighter or a person within their town taking actions to save those around them. So I love this book. I hope Kelsey loved it too. I'm afraid to ask this question because after the utter devastation of Demon Copperhead, I don't like if Kelsey does not like this book, we might have to end the episode right after. I like my heart
done.
Like, end the recording. Oh God. Okay, so Kelsey, was this book
We literally have not talked about it
at all? Was this book a lit it or quit it for you? Dear God.
Amanda.
No.
It was a lit it.
Oh my God. I literally, my heart just paused for it to be. Okay. Yes. Okay. Like a legit lit it or like a soft lit it or like
legit lit it.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I would definitely say, thinking about the women, I would definitely say this book is better storytelling than the women.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree with that as well, for sure. Yeah. Okay.
So yes.
Okay. Well,
time for the summary.
Time for the summary, and we'll get into the
Which,
details.
Dear God,
later.
it is long.
It's a long book. It's 564 pages.
And unlike Amanda, I don't go off the cuff because I would forget so many details. My brain doesn't work that way.
Yeah. I was going to say mine doesn't either. What I do before the episode is I'll go and read through a summary and refresh my memory, and then I can do it if I looked at it right before.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I forget stuff.
I just think about also like the side characters in here. I would forget to mention them, and then all of a sudden something would happen with them, and then I didn't mention them. Okay. So I'll be reading through.
Okay.
The summary that I wrote. All right. So it's important to know that the book starts with the like more present time, which is in
Mm-hmm.
1995,
Mm-hmm.
but most of the novel occurs during World War II between 1939 and 1945. And so I only mention the current timeline at the beginning and end,
Mm-hmm.
but throughout the book we do go back and forth. The story opens in Oregon,
Mm-hmm.
actually, of all
Mm-hmm.
places,
Of all
in
places.
1995, where an elderly Vianne is living with her son. As the weight of her years settles in, she begins to reminisce about the life she left behind in France. The memory then shifts to 1939. Vianne is living a quiet life with her husband, Antoine, and daughter, Sophie. But Europe is on the precipice of war, and simultaneously, her sister Isabelle is expelled from school and forced to return to Paris to live with her father. And then, as German forces descend upon the city of Paris, panic grips the population during a chaotic exodus. Isabel and her father endure like a terrifying aerial bombardment before he sends her to seek refuge at Vianne's home, her sister, in Caravu. I listened to the audiobook and
Mm-hmm.
now like the words are like Caravu. I don't know. Um, Isabel's journey is fraught with perils. So her car runs out of fuel. She's initially with a family
Mm-hmm.
and the car runs out of fuel and it's everyone for themselves. So she's by herself. She ends up continuing on foot
Mm-hmm.
and she encounters a man, Gaetan, who she travels through the land with where their air raids are happening upon these groups of people who are trying to flee the area, and eventually she reaches Anne's village. Antoine and all the men of Caravu are sent to war. Another important character is Vianne's friend Rachel, who has two children, Sarah and Ari. And while the Germans do not occupy the town immediately, their eventual arrival brings like strict demands. Curfews are set, and all radios and weapons have to be surrendered. And Vianne and Isabel find themselves like at odds of how to respond to this occupation. Vianne is really focused on survival of her young child, chooses compliance to maintain safety, and Isabel, fueled by youthful defiance, views her sister's caution as cowardice. And however, Isabel's early attempts at resistance are impulsive and dangerous, which places the entire family at risk. Tensions escalate between the family or within the family when a German soldier is billeted in their home due to its proximity to an airfield.
Mm-hmm.
And Vianne refuses to abandon her house to the military, choosing to stay and endure like the intrusion. And Isabel's hostility, though, remains overt. When the soldier, for example, when the soldier mockingly compliments her hair, she shears it off and hands it to him. And he responds with a warning about such displays of temper could be dangerous for her.
Mm-hmm.
And then soon after, Isabel begins working with the French resistance by distributing underground flyers. And she eventually decides, which is maybe like over a year, that she can no longer live under the same roof as this enemy. And in 1941, Isabel moves back to Paris and her involvement with the resistance deepens and her assignments grow increasingly dangerous. At one point, she's harboring a downed British pilot in her father's apartment. She volunteers to lead she then, because the issue with the resistance is they have no way of getting these people to safety,
Mm-hmm.
she volunteers to lead pilots to safety. And she begins like this grueling route, escorting airmen across the south of France and over the Pyrenees Mountains to escape occupied territory.
Mm-hmm.
And then while Isabel fights in this way, Vianne's life becomes a struggle for basic survival. She ends up losing her job and she becomes dependent on the German soldiers' rations to stay alive. And when he is away, she's forced to sell like valuables that Isabelle, her sister, in what's the word I'm looking for? She hid these things at the beginning of the war
Mm-hmm.
so that they would have access to them if they needed them. And at the time, Vianne was like, this is stupid. We don't need
You're
to be
being
doing
ridiculous.
this. Yeah. But Vianne eventually collapses from malnutrition because she's been giving the little amount of food that she has to her daughter, Sophie. So then in 1942, the war escalates again. And Vianne's friend Rachel, who is Jewish, is forced to start wearing a yellow star on her clothing along with her children. And as the mass deportations of foreign born Jewish people begin, the soldier billeted with Vianne warns her one day that Rachel shouldn't be home the following morning for her safety. And Rachel attempts to flee with her daughter and son, but her daughter, Sarah, is killed by gunfire at the border. And so Rachel and her son end up hiding in Vianne's barn to seek refuge. And then the morning passes, and believing the immediate danger has passed, Rachel does return home, only to be arrested by French police and deported by train. And Vianne takes in Rachel's son to protect him, and he's given a false identity so that he is not taken by police later on. Then later, during that time, Isabelle is also developing this like romance between Gaetan and her.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have this going on. And at one point, she's traveling back from the Pyrenees to go back to Paris to go do another run of folks. Isabelle witnesses an Allied plane crash near Carvu. And on one of those travels and missions, she hides the pilot in Vianne's barn, where she also hid like all the valuables.
Mm-hmm.
So she knows exactly where this is. But the German soldier discovers them, and that is billeted at Vianne's home. And in a moment of violence, Isabelle shoots him while Vianne doesn't hesitate to strike him and hit him from behind with a shovel. And both of those wounds kill him pretty immediately. And Isabelle is also wounded at this time. And so during this time, resistance contacts dispose of the bodies of both the soldier and the pilot. It's long.
You're doing great.
So this is really a turning point for Vianne and her own like sense of like duty in the war, realizing like Isabelle's has been brave this whole
Mm-hmm.
time and really seeking to do something in this war. Vianne begins her own quiet rebellion. So following a new wave of local arrests of Jewish folks, Vianne takes a neighbor's son to a local orphanage, and together her and a nun devise a plan to hide and save Jewish children for the remainder of the war. And by 1944, the atmosphere is really awful. And as the Allies gain ground, the Germans become like increasingly brutal in France, where they've been occupying. And following the invasion of Normandy, the new man that's billeted at the man that Isabelle loves joins the active fighting, Gaetan. And then meanwhile, a new suspicious German officer named von Richter begins monitoring Vianne, suspecting her of underground activities. And one thing I didn't mention is that right after the first German's death, this man starts to billet at her home. And he's more of a cruel German officer. Isabelle is eventually captured at a safe house in the south of France. After like a really brutal interrogation, she wakes up trapped in a refrigeration unit. And the only way that she is released is that her father ends up visiting Vianne to say goodbye. And he confesses to the Germans that he is the Nightingale, because that's who they're looking for to secure, which I haven't even mentioned, see, to secure Isabelle's release. And so, yeah, we can talk about that later. war. But Isabelle is instead sent to a concentration camp instead of being murdered there.
Mm-hmm.
And Vianne is subjected to like really horrific abuse and rape by the new German officer, which results in a pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
Almost there, guys. Then starting to conclude the story with Vianne's husband ends up returning, Antoine. He had escaped the camp that he was imprisoned at.
Mm-hmm.
And though the war is ending, Vianne realizes she can never tell her husband the truth of the origin of the child she's carrying.
Mm-hmm.
But there is this undertone of knowing. It's just never said by Antoine. And so Vianne and her family end up traveling to Paris in search of friends and her sister. She finds out that Rachel and her husband died during the war, that Rachel was sent to Auschwitz and died within the first month. And then her husband, Mark, was killed in the camp that he was at. And she also works to find like the families of the 19 children she ended up saving during the war.
Mm-hmm.
And at this time, there's no word from Isabelle yet. It sounds like the camp that she was at had not been liberated at that time quite yet. It was called Ravens. Do you happen to remember?
Ravensbrück?
Yeah, Ravensbrück, which was specific for women and especially for women who were working against
the Nazis.
Yeah. But we found out Isabelle survived almost a year in a concentration camp and returns home like very sickly. And so she gets to spend some time trying to recover and heal with Vianne and her family. And eventually Gaëtan, we find out that he also survived the war and he returns to Isabelle. And then this final chapter, it like cuts to Vianne going to Paris because she had been invited to the 50th reunion of the end of the war in 1995. And she is celebrated and she has her son with her at this time who knows nothing about the history. And she honors Isabelle at the event. And we find out in this chapter that Isabelle actually died at home in Carrefour after Gaëtan had visited. And so that is the ending.
Yes. Yeah. It's you did a great job. It is a very long book, but I feel like for me, it didn't feel long because I did want to see these stories through for all the characters. And just a quick little additional bit of information. So obviously Julian, the son at the end, is the son of von Richter. And I think at that point at the very end, she hasn't told him that yet. So yeah, they haven't gotten to the detail of that part of the story. Yeah. But the other thing is the original soldier that was living with Vianne, his name was Beck. Yeah. And he was more kind to her than von Richter. And so they were living together rather amiably as far as that goes. And so she was getting by, quote unquote. And then it really was when von Richter shows up after Beck is killed, as Kelsey mentioned, where things really take a turn for the worse. And the living situation becomes pretty untenable. And that's also, as Kelsey said, when Vianne is like, okay, I really need to step up and try to fight back in any way that I can. Yeah. Okay. I hope there's a lot to say for this part because you gave it a lit. But yeah, what were some of the things about this book that you really enjoyed?
Yeah. So I would say Isabelle's arc. I really enjoyed seeing her come from this snotty, annoying teenage girl to someone who's like risking her life essentially every day to support the cause. Because yeah, she really does grow a ton in the book. And I think that at the very end, what does Vianne say? The day before Gaëtan ended up coming to our home, she said, her life was fulfilled essentially. And then she dies. And I felt like it was good writing.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah. Solid writing. She's so talented.
And God, when did I tell you I finished it? Oh, it was like Tuesday.
Yeah.
A couple days
ago. No, it wasn't Tuesday. It was after. Yeah. Chapter.
because I saw you Saturday
Mm-hmm.
and then I was like, oh my God, I just finished Nightingale. And I was like on a walk and I was listening to it
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, oh, are you serious? Like Isabel's death. And I was like, fuck.
It's a heartbreaker. It's a tearjerker. It's gonna,
um,
yeah.
because everything that she went through in the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like just to die at the end of the war, which like it makes sense for her
Mm-hmm.
character. It really
Mm-hmm.
does.
Mm-hmm.
But God, that's
But the
just
injustice
oh
of it all.
yes. And then the other thing that I liked about this book was that it explored the lives of people who were like left behind
Mm-hmm.
and left to survive the
Mm-hmm.
war.
Yeah.
And you don't often see that
Mm-hmm.
portrayal. You often
Mm-hmm.
see like the other side of things where it's a fighting or
Yeah.
people in concentration camps and their stories. And so I felt like that was,
Yeah.
enjoyed that aspect because you
Yeah.
don't like, for example, Vianne and like what she goes through and like thinking about just like the rations and
Mm-hmm.
like how they had to stand in line every day
Mm-hmm.
to get some sort of food.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, that given day, that was, yeah, it's not something that's like widely
Yeah.
highlighted
Yeah.
about the war
Yeah.
or about war in general.
I think that was one of my favorite parts too, because yes, you have the more kind of visible acts of heroism in a character like Isabel. Like we
Mm-hmm.
know about the French resistance fighters and all of these very large scale, ultimately well known, right?
Mm-hmm.
Actions they were taking to help the Allied forces. But then you
Yeah.
have folks like Vianne who are making all of these everyday, seemingly small choices and
Mm-hmm.
decisions. Like, do I eat today or do I feed my child? Or how do I
Mm-hmm.
navigate the complexities of this German soldier living in my house? Like, how can
Mm-hmm.
I still be true to my values and fight back, but also
Mm-hmm.
take care of those around me? And I think those stories often get, like you said, overlooked because they're not as
Mm-hmm.
flashy or showy, but those quiet acts of resistance were also just as important, right? Even if it was
Mm-hmm.
just like one person who saved one child and hid them in their attic,
Right.
right? And you never hear that story because it's
Mm-hmm.
not on such a large scale, but they were risking their lives, they were risking everything.
Mm-hmm.
And suffering. And I remember one scene so vividly, and I don't know why, because it's not anything super crazy about
Yeah.
this book where Vianne is like getting up one morning. It's the winter time. Of course, there's no heat. There's no like firewood. She's freezing and she's
Mm-hmm.
like stuffing newspapers inside of her clothes to stay warm. And she's developed, I always mispronounce this word. I think it's like chilblains that happens when
Mm-hmm.
your body is just like cold all the time and how painful they are. And it's like those little things that those daily sufferings that we just don't ever really think about for, like
Yeah.
you said, all the people who were quote unquote left behind and trying to eke by an existence in occupied territories.
Yeah.
And also, when I finished the book, I was like, if that had been me, if I had lived in that time in that place, would I have been an Isabella or a Vianne or neither?
Mm-hmm.
And I did think
Or
about
something
that.
else. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like,
Mm-hmm.
how would I have responded? Would I have just tried to keep my head down and not make waves and just get by? Would I
Mm-hmm.
have gone a boulder out like Isabel did? And yeah, I do wonder about that sometimes, just like how I would respond
Yeah.
in
I
times of grief. Yeah.
I think that's the ultimate question of the book
Mm-hmm.
that people get to ponder throughout is like, how would I respond in a time like this? This book made me think so much, and it still has me really pondering a lot because we're in a time where we're facing some of these things
Mm-hmm.
and it's reality. And it's just some of the parallels of what
Mm-hmm.
happened
Yeah.
in World War II are
Mm-hmm.
absolutely happening right now in our
Yeah.
country.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the news or like what's going to be going on in a month, but right now, like Minnesota and Minneapolis in general, there is still a big struggle over there
Mm-hmm.
and it's not happening over here. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's people definitely feel like it's not happening. But
Mm-hmm.
there is like this violence occurring against the people within this country. And it's under the guise of whether or not someone did something legally or
Mm-hmm.
illegally.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in a time of
Mm-hmm.
what are you going to do?
Yeah,
Literally.
exactly. Literally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Are
people
dying and people
literally
are being mistreated
mm-hmm.
and
Taken from their
abused,
homes.
kidnapped.
Yep.
Yes.
Like incarcerated.
Literally.
Yeah. Detained. It's literally like you're saying, there's so many parallels.
Yes.
Even as Van is watching her neighbors, literally her neighbors being rounded up
Yeah.
because they are now illegal. And we're literally seeing that happen now with
Mhm.
everything with ICE. And it's like, in the face of injustice and wrongdoing, what side are you going to be on? Are you just going to
Mhm.
be like, well, it's not like you said, it's not happening here. It's not my problem, or I just need to
Mhm.
look out for me and my own? Or are you going to be someone who's literally on the front lines, putting your body in front of a bullet for another person or
Right. We've
oh,
seen that already.
literally, yes, we have. You think about like Alex Preddy, for example, and it's just
Mhm.
like, yeah, I think about that. I'm like, if I currently in Seattle, where we both are, we're not
Mhm.
seeing that, at least not to the scale that it's happening in places
Mhm.
like Minnesota. But it's, yeah, it's not like this hypothetical anymore. It's
Mhm.
okay. If this happens in my city, what am I going to do? What choices am I
Yeah.
going to make? And so I do like, I mean, it's one reason why I like historical fiction in general. I think people think of
Mhm.
historical fiction as something that's so far removed. It's boring, it's dry, it has no relevance. And it's like, no, as we know, history repeats itself. And these patterns that we've fallen into as humanity, like they come around again and again cyclically. And
Mhm.
like either we look back and see what happened and what we can do better, or we ignore it and we just live it over and over again and make the same
Mhm.
mistakes. And so there's actually a lot to be learned from Vianne
Absolutely.
and Isabel's story and how they chose to respond.
Mhm.
And I personally, like I said, I think I related more to Vianne's story because I think realistically, especially she's a mom too, right? So she's looking out for her daughter, but
Mhm.
she really doesn't have that major shift to go out and do something until it
Yeah.
impacts her more directly. Like when she sees her friend and coworker Rachel taken, when she sees
Mhm.
Rachel's daughter Sarah shot in front of her, that's when I was like, oh my gosh,
Right.
this is an issue. This is a real thing that's directly impacting me. When she sees her sister get shot in front of her, and
Mhm.
that's like the catalyst she needs to finally be like, I can't sit on the sidelines
Yeah.
anymore. But
And
yeah,
and that's the other thing too. I don't think there's any right or wrong
correct.
way to
Yeah.
interact with what's going on. I
Hmm.
think the only thing I would regret is like never doing anything
Anything. Yeah. Yeah.
personally. Or
Yeah.
like, because some people also were faced with the choice, not in this book necessarily, but faced with the choice of being on the side of like evil essentially
Yeah.
versus
Hmm.
I guess some you see some of that with the French officers
Hmm.
and they end up like rounding up like people
Hmm.
for the
Hmm.
German side. And so I guess
Hmm.
you do see some of
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
But mostly it's just about like how do you resist
Yeah.
in
And
this book.
the different ways that can
Mhm.
happen. I think too, one of the other things I liked about this book, and this will come up in one of the reviews that I'm going to read later,
Okay.
is that Kristin Hanna, and one of the additional reasons why I love her is that she often, and this is probably true for a lot of historical fiction authors, but she really does try to base her characters on people's actual
Oh.
stories and real
Mhm.
lived experiences. And
Yeah.
so Isabel's character is based on this young woman called, and it's French. So again, I apologize in advance for
Yeah.
butchering her name, but it's like André de Jung. And she ended up
Is she
saving,
actually French though?
she was originally, I think, from Belgium,
Okay, yeah.
but she ended up saving like all of these
Mhm.
airmen, right? And making this trek, like you were saying, and leading them to safety. And so that's who Isabel's character is based on. So she
Mhm.
also isn't just like pulling like stories of heroism out of thin air. She's
Right.
also like, no, I did my research and looked at what actually happened. And again, trying to celebrate, which she does in most of her books, like all of her books, actually, I'm trying to think because I've read all of them almost, are focused on women, right? And
Mm.
their stories of whether it's sisterhood, whether it's stories of heroism, survival, etc.
Mhm.
And I like that she takes the opportunity to like honor and celebrate those women, especially because a lot of times those stories are untold.
Right.
And it's very different because we've talked about this book too. Anita de Monte laughs last, where she's like, yeah, I'm going to tell this woman's story, but I'm not going to give her any credit. I'm not going to name her. I'm not. And I
Yeah.
think Kristen Hanna does a good job of like, these are the real women who I base these characters on. Go and do your research,
Yeah.
learn more about them, celebrate them, share their story. So
Mm-hmm.
I also loved it for that as well, because obviously historical fiction is also super educational.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, all of the happenings
Sure, all
throughout the
the
book,
events. Hmm.
like, were from
Yes, they
actual,
actually happened.
like, and one thing that I did not know, something new I learned,
Hmm.
was when the Germans first occupied Paris,
Hmm.
that there were a ton of people who fled, which makes
Hmm.
sense,
Hmm.
but then were attacked by German soldiers and
As they were fleeing.
airmen. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was something I had never read about or learned
Yeah.
about, or I had and I forgotten about it.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
don't think that's quite often talked about.
No. And it
Um,
happened in so many countries too, right?
mhm,
Because it comes up in some of Ruta Cepeda's books when people are in like Eastern Europe and are fleeing.
yeah.
And yeah, just like whatever they can carry on their backs. A lot
Hmm.
of people on foot. Yeah, like you said, some people were in cars, but then the fuel ran out and they're just
Yeah.
like, all right, we
Walk
just gotta
from here.
go. We're just walking. While they're walking, they're getting, like you said, there's bombs dropping because
Yeah.
they're just like sitting ducks. That's another part of the story that even after, because I've read this book years ago, it's
Yeah.
just so vividly etched in my mind. I'm like, I
Hmm.
remember reading that scene as Bella's fleeing
Yeah.
Paris and just
And it
chaos and terror. Yeah.
it makes so much sense for Isabel's character too, that she endured that at the very beginning of the war, and that's why
Hmm.
she has this,
Yeah.
the perspective she has, right?
Yeah.
Is she saw people literally dying in front of her,
Hmm.
because of the Germans, and Vianne hasn't lived
Yeah.
through that yet.
She's a bit more
Um,
sheltered. Hmm.
and that's the other thing too I wanted to say about the book. I thought it did a really great job of slowly increasing the danger of,
Hmm.
like, how people thought about what was going on.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
Vianne's trajectory was different than Isabel's. Like we said, Isabel, it was like straight away, oh, Germans are pieces of shit because they're doing this,
Yeah.
they're murdering all these people, and I know what they're capable of from the get go. But Vianne, she's seeing it slowly build.
Hmm.
And I feel like that was an experience, that's something that across like humanity, I think you
Hmm.
experience in
Hmm.
situations like this,
Hmm.
because it's so unbelievable
Hmm.
what is actually happening,
Hmm.
and no one thinks that it's going to get to this point
Escalate to
of,
that point. Hmm.
and that's what we're seeing right now too in
Yeah.
our current state.
Hmm.
Because I'm one of those people, like, back when Trump was first elected, I was like,
Hmm.
no way, it's never gonna happen. I was
Hmm.
like, he was the fire guy. What? Because I used to watch that show. What was it?
The
Apprentice.
Apprentice.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was like, what? That's ridiculous. So those kinds of things, like, you just
Hmm.
never believe until it's
Yeah. Until they're
happening
happening. And yeah.
at times. And so with Vianne, like, watching her and her friend and just knowing, like, it's heartbreaking to see that they didn't take it seriously, and that when the German officer comes to live with her, she's like, I'm
Hmm.
not leaving my home. And
Yeah.
Isabel's, fuck this. What are you talking about? I don't know. I'm like, that was like a point of decision.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know that I could have just stayed, because
Hmm.
what is possessions? What are
Hmm.
possessions in the
Hmm.
end, right? Like, she wanted to
Yeah.
keep her home,
Hmm.
but yeah. So anyway, it's like those progressions, and like eventually she gives this list of names to the German that's with
Hmm.
her.
Hmm.
And he's, who are the Jewish people, who are the communists, who are the homosexuals,
Hmm.
and asked for something else. And she listed all these people that she knew that
Hmm.
were at her school. And then
Hmm.
eventually they all got fired.
Hmm.
Right. But then they continue to be labeled in this
Hmm.
community. Right. And then eventually they were kidnapped.
Hmm.
But Rachel could have been safe
Hmm.
if she just stayed in the barn.
Hmm.
And of course, like, so much more could have happened beyond that. But that's how some people ended up being safe in the war, is that
Hmm.
they literally hid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she was like, oh, we stink. I need a bath. This was why she got out.
Yeah. I need to go
And
home and yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
Vianne was like, nothing's happening in town. So,
It's fine.
and then she was arrested and
I
taken
mean,
away.
I think
It's wild.
I think that's why I liked Vianne's story so much more, because it felt so much more authentic. Because, and
Mm-hmm.
again, I think a really key part of who Vianne is that she's a mom. And
Yeah.
so you're not just making decisions for yourself. It's not like she's like, all right, I'm going to up and leave and figure things out
Yeah.
on my own, like Isabel can as an 18, 19-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, who has a lot more freedom and not another person to care for. And so I think this idea, especially back then, but even so now, like giving up your home and essentially all of your earthly possessions and to head into the unknown when you don't know how long this conflict is going to last, if it's going to
Mm-hmm.
escalate, if it's just a kind of a minor skirmish that'll be done within a couple of months. And then you're going to be like, yeah, I gave up everything that my family has worked so hard for. I obviously hindsight's 2020 and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
Vianne, you could have done X, Y, or Z. But I'm like, no, like that makes perfect sense. I can understand so much why you made the choices that you did, why you didn't
Mm-hmm.
assume that it was going to escalate in this way, that they were going to round people up, they were going to fire people, they were going to send them to
Mm-hmm. Oh,
concentration camps.
totally. Yeah.
Who would think
Mm-hmm.
that? What precedent did she have to
Yeah.
think that it would go that far? But with that said, now that we have seen those things happen, and
Yeah.
here we are in
Right.
2026, 20, yeah, 2026.
Yes.
I was like, 2026. And we see right now where the Trump administration is like, what, like buying up warehouses to turn into detainment centers. It's like, we've seen
Mhm.
this before. We know how
Yes.
this ends. We are not in this situation of Vianne, who's like, I couldn't have even conjured that up in my wildest imaginings that this is where things would end up. And so again, I think armed with that, we have the ability now to make
Yeah.
different choices. But I can say in that moment, I don't know what would Vianne have looked back on. I guess World War One had happened at that point, obviously, but
Mhm.
even then, there weren't concentration camps in World War One. They
Mhm.
weren't rounding up,
Just awful fighting.
yeah. So she didn't really have a reference point to be like, yep, this is where it
Mhm.
could go. So let's get out of here. And
Yeah.
she didn't have her husband either. And again, thinking about the dynamics of
Mhm.
sexism and the patriarchy and who ran what, like for her to make that
In the
massive choice without
40s.
her husband to be like, yep, I gave up all of our property in our home because things were starting to look a little sketchy. Yeah. And it would have been
And
so dangerous for a single mom and a child out unsheltered, unhoused.
and yes, and there was a point where only at the beginning could people have left.
Correct. Because the
And
borders were like
then
shut down.
and then at some point it became too dangerous to
Mm-hmm.
leave. And
Mm-hmm.
so there definitely was like a point of no return
Yeah.
on your
Yeah,
decision. So,
exactly.
for sure. Yeah, it's interesting to be able to ponder those things.
Yeah. And like I said, having the parallel stories was such a smart move on her end because I think it
Mhm.
made the recounting of this part of French history so much more expansive than if she'd only told Vianne's story, if she'd only told Isabel's story. I think that for me has set it apart from a lot of other World War II era books that
Mhm.
I've read that have focused
Mhm.
on one or the other. Usually, again, like you said, more on Isabel's story with
Yeah.
like resistance fighters and things. Curious though, was there anything you didn't like about the books?
I would say it's not something I didn't like that deterred me, but I would
Okay.
say the beginning definitely feels slow.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then of course, like at the beginning, I hated Isabel. I was like, Isabel, can you
hmm
just like not be like this? You're so annoying.
Yeah.
But I end up really loving her story and her arc.
Yeah, that's fair.
Um, she went through a fuck ton. And it
She
was
did.
like to think at the end, like it was almost a year that she was in this concentration camp.
hmm
What the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah, she
It
ended
just
up contracting pneumonia and typhus like
typhus, yeah.
by the time they like find her. I also wondered too, and we didn't talk about this at all, and it's not a huge part of the story, but it is especially at the
Mhm.
beginning, like their family dynamic because their
Oh
mom
yeah.
is dead.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then their father abandoned them and
Mhm.
like left them to their own devices. And so for me, I think I had a little bit more grace for Isabel, especially because that's a lot for a kid to endure, like the death of your mother as a young
Mhm.
woman, and then to have a father who is like largely absent in a lot of ways. Like
Mhm.
her acting out in that way, again, tracked for me. And I don't mind annoying characters or messy characters if who they are seems justified in my head based on their circumstances or whatever. And to me, I think it did. And I was like, I can see why you're a young woman who's struggling.
Yeah, I think the thing that most annoyed me was that she was putting Vianne and her daughter like in danger.
She's pretty
And
hot
that
headed.
yes, and so that was the thing that was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to like get out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um so
What did you think about because we didn't talk about it too much, but,
Mhm.
I guess we didn't quite get it in the summary, but when Gaetan and Isabel meet on the
Mhm.
road from Paris,
Mhm.
like feelings start to grow at that point. But
Mhm.
Gaetan ultimately like leaves Isabel pretty close to the beginning of the story because he's like,
Yes.
I'm heading off to fight the good fight and you're not cut
Mhm.
out for this.
Yeah.
And that really pisses her off. And I think it's also, again, one more catalyst for her to be like, yes, not only am I going
Yeah.
to do this for me, I'm also going to like prove to Gaetan I've got what it takes. And so I think that's a
Mhm.
big part of her arc as well. And ultimately, as we know from Kelsey, your summary, like Gaetan shows back up in this story. She gets him ultimately to confess, yeah, I do have feelings for you.
Mhm.
What did you think about the relationship?
One other thing that I learned from the very beginning about Gaetan
Hmm.
and his story, because he
Hmm.
tells her that he was a prisoner, right?
Yeah.
And they just released all of the prisoners
Hmm.
at that point
Hmm.
once France was occupied, which I
Hmm.
didn't know that
Yeah.
happened.
Hmm.
So that was interesting. And I think it just also shows her being naive in this way,
Yeah.
where she ends up trusting this man who she knows is some sort of prisoner for some reason.
Yeah. Some
Never
sort of
really,
convict. Yeah.
never really knows what happened or
Hmm.
why. And the other thing, we don't really understand like how old he is.
No.
And so that's really ambiguous. Like
Yeah.
clearly he's older than her,
Yeah.
but he does show some care for her in the beginning where
Hmm.
he helps protect her from the bombings
Yeah.
and they go together on the trek to Karavu. But then he leaves her with this note, right? The
Hmm.
note is what it says,
Yeah.
you're not ready or something like that.
Yeah.
Leaves her in the barn of her sister's place and he's gone.
Yeah. He's
and
out.
and then they hook up later knowing that he's become a resistance fighter as well on
Hmm.
the ground in
Hmm.
France and Paris.
Hmm.
And then she joins the fight and
Hmm.
he ends up looking out for her in some way because he's
Hmm.
the one following her
Hmm.
throughout her shenanigans in Paris
Yeah.
because she always feels like someone is following her and
Hmm.
then realizes, oh, it is him. But I think it made sense that he was trying to stay apart from her.
Hmm.
So because it's war and
Yeah.
you lose people, you die,
Hmm.
and also romantic relationship can make you make stupid decisions
Yep.
in times of war.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they made stupid decisions in the end, but they had to make difficult decisions, like
Hmm.
as every time they had to leave
Hmm.
one
Yeah.
another.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seemed like their trajectory was. I didn't have this like intense connection to them, or
Sure.
but it made sense for the story.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. I don't think I was like
Yeah.
super deeply invested in it because it's certainly not a romance. Like
Yeah.
the romance is not at the heart of the story. I think it's about love of country and love of family and love of your fellow like neighbors and humankind more so than like
Yeah.
romantic love. But yeah, so I was just curious. But I think the
Mhm.
only other thing which we talked about already, I think this book, I want to say it also happens in another book that I read, and I don't remember which book it was, but it's also a World War II era book about people escaping occupied territories and going on these crazy physically strenuous treks, right,
Mm.
on foot
Mhm.
over mountain passes, etc., to get to other countries like Spain, etc. And
Right.
that always just blows me away. Just the amount of endurance and strength and wherewithal you have to have physically to
Yes.
endure that. And you mentioned this in the summary, Isabel is ultimately captured because at this point she has this code name, the Nightingale, and she's
Yes.
wanted by the Nazis because she's been really
Mhm.
successful in like ferrying these men across the Pyrenees Mountains to
Mhm.
safety. And so once they get their hands on her, they savagely beat and torture her. And
Mhm.
again, I've often thought about that too. I'm like, if I was in that position, got caught and was being tortured, would I be able to endure and maintain my silence and not rat people out? I don't know.
Mhm.
And I guess you don't know until you're in that moment, but I'm always so impressed by that. And there's another story of a young woman who I think this was in Poland. She was a nurse who would go into, yeah, the ghetto in Warsaw where they were housing Jewish people. And she was able to smuggle out, God, hundreds, at least 100, I think,
Mhm.
children and get them to safety, would forge their papers, etc. And she too was captured ultimately by the Nazis. I think they like
Mhm.
broke her feet or broke her hands or something horrific.
Ugh.
She ultimately survived. She lived to be like
Oh,
90 or
damn.
something, etc. But it's just like and she never gave up their names. She never gave up a single child's name. Ultimately, they were going
Mm-hmm.
to send her away to be executed, and the convoy
Yeah.
was intercepted by like resistance fighters, and she was rescued. But
Mm-hmm.
crazy story, just crazy story. And I'm just like,
Yes.
again, I don't know if I have that in me. I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, and so I'm always just like fascinated by these stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think all of what Isabel goes through,
Hmm.
it makes sense for her to die in the end too. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
how do you live on
After that.
knowing all of these things happened and what happened to you?
Hmm.
Like, I don't know. I do deeply wonder about the survivors of the Holocaust
Yeah.
and how
Yeah. How do
they
you go on with life after that?
came
Everything you've
out of
seen. Yeah.
it. It's horrendous.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so I think about that as well.
Hmm.
And just there was something you mentioned. Oh, yeah. And one of the things that Isabel mentions in her story is just that while she was at the concentration camp, it was like, oh, she was just living moment by moment,
Hmm. Hmm.
not thinking about anything else or escaping or surviving. It was just like one moment at a time.
Hmm.
And there was a line in there that said something along the lines of the women who grieved or were sad end up
Oh,
dying
yes. Hmm. Yeah.
because they're letting their emotions like
Hmm.
take hold, right?
Hmm.
And how do you not?
Yeah.
How did
How do
you
you
not
suppress
like
that? Yeah.
and so you suppress that to survive. And
Hmm.
then what are you left with in the end if
Yeah.
you do survive?
Yeah. Because you
Awesome.
even see the way that, because Vianne obviously lives on to be an old lady,
Hmm.
and the way that she's survived what she seems by like never talking about it. Like her son knows
Yes.
nothing about her history,
And
knows nothing about
leaving.
her story. Yeah. And leaving it all behind, moving to America, starting afresh, and just, yeah, locking it away
Hmm.
in a box in your mind and never diving into
Hmm.
it. And I feel like, yeah, for a lot of people, understandably, like that's what you have to do in order to like
Yeah.
keep living and being able to find new
Yeah.
moments of like joy and reasons to put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
wonder too, with her including that,
Hmm.
was that a very common thing
Yeah.
for people to leave the area and go to a different country,
Yeah.
like the
I
US,
mean, there were a lot of refugees after World
you
War
know,
II who just left Europe
hmm
and came here for a
or
variety of
other places.
reasons.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I think that very much was the case for a lot of people. And then, yeah, then there were folks who stayed and had to like rebuild from like the ashes, literally.
The
Okay.
one
And
other
yeah, go ahead. I was
thing,
going to ask if there's anything else.
I wanted to mention was that, which is not frequently mentioned
Hmm.
in World War II books
Hmm.
or history, was the involvement of Northern Africa.
Oh,
And
yeah. Hmm.
yeah, so yeah, I thought that was a good addition
Yeah.
to it all.
Yeah. A lot was, it's funny because like you don't hear much about the war front on the
Mm.
African continent during World War II.
Yeah.
Like you hear about stuff happening in like the Pacific theater and things happening in Europe and things like that, but there was a
Mhm.
lot happening
Yeah.
in Northern
Throughout the
Africa as
world.
well. Yeah, all over, all over. And
Mhm.
I do wonder, I'm sure there's got to be some good historical fiction novels that dive into that part of
Sure.
the world during that time period that
Mhm.
I'll need to seek out because, yeah, I would be curious to know more. Any other final thoughts before we move on?
I think that's it.
Okay. Okay. I'm sure things will come up as always during the reviews. And I am definitely very curious and hopeful that the movie will do this book justice.
I'm sure it will. I don't know. I have faith.
I feel like, yeah, yeah, I think both of the Fanning sisters are strong actresses. So
Yes.
I have hope. Because
Yeah.
if they butcher this movie, I'm going to be so upset. Okay, so we're going to switch to our literally the best or literally the worst. This week I have 5-star and Kelsey's got 1-star reviews, which means Kelsey is going to start for us.
This was funny reading through these.
Okay.
They're brutal.
Oh,
So
man.
I'm so yeah. Anyway,
Okay.
we'll walk
We'll
through
just
them.
dive right in.
This one is from Anne. It says World War II light, half the facts, all the romance. The perfect account of the French resistance for the soccer moms out there who don't have any time to read quality books. Soccer moms will find this one amazing. Really, who has time to read boring history? For those who think that this is actually good writing, please don't homeschool your children. Please.
Oh my God. Wait, is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Damn. Okay, Anne, you had some strong feelings. Guess that makes me a soccer mom because I totally liked this book.
I guess there is one thing I would say, at points, the writing isn't super, I don't know, great. It's the writing is pretty basic. It's not this amazing, over
literary. Yeah, I would agree.
It's Kristin
very
Hannah.
accessible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I don't think that takes away from the power or value of the story itself. I don't think she.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't feel like she glossed over everything. And I don't think that the romance is that big a part of the story. It's there, but it's not the thing. And if that's all you got from it, then that's
so sad.
Yeah, a little sad.
For
okay. My first 5-star is from Reading Tamishly. Halfway through the book, I was like, I don't think I will cry or even feel sad. Why is everyone talking about how sad it is and making a big deal out of it? Trudge on, I told myself. Then came the second half of the book. It's insanely fast-paced by then for historical fiction, and things started making sense. Regarding the first half of the book, I was busy judging the characters and the events that were happening. But still, the writing style is really good that it was not an issue continuing on. The characters seem complex and unreasonable at the beginning, but things fall in place as the story continues. Relationships develop, and you will want more of these characters. All you would want is to make them all be together and enjoy a good meal at least once before the book ends. The separations and the heartbreaks, the communication gaps, and the unavoidable situations will break you. The ending is beautiful, yet it leaves you totally sobbing and broken. But your heart will have the acceptance and closure. The ending feels so wholesome. I have never cried so hard reading a fiction in my entire life. This book is all about family, and I'm a sucker for historical fiction. Is there any other book in which sisters sacrifice this much for each other? Let me grieve. I won't be the same again. This book is my most memorable read at the end of 2019. Yeah.
I would say I didn't cry that much, but I was definitely crying.
Yeah, same. I didn't it wasn't gasping sobs, but I definitely cried.
Yeah. I've cried harder at books. But now I don't know which ones. Actually, the women, I did cry more.
Oh, yeah. The women's, yeah.
But it was it was for a different reason. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is from Jennifer.
Okay.
I really wanted to like this book, but it broke my melodrama cliche. And you might have to help me with this anachronism meter. Anachronism meter.
Mm-hmm.
I adore reading historical novels about World War II, and the fact that this one takes place in France should have sealed the deal for me. But when I read chapters that open with "She woke with tears streaming down her face and realized she had been dreaming about her husband, who is off at war again," I really just want to throw the book across the room. Has anyone ever woken up with tears streaming down their face unless something was physically irritating their eye? This is only one of hundreds of examples of what I consider to be very Harlequin, very cliche writing. These pages unleashed a steady assault on my cynical sensibilities until finally, after plodding through 35% of the book, I gave up. I gotta say, I feel more than a little bamboozled by Goodreads on this one. It has a 4.53 average rating by almost 60,000 readers. What's wrong with me? Life is too short, and there are too many good books out there to stick with the ones that make us cringe. I fear that no World War II novel I read will ever compare to Herman Wouk's masterpiece, The Winds of War, which has apparently ruined me for life.
Okay, I have to say this. I feel like this person, and perhaps the other person whose review you've already read, they just come off as a little stuffy. I can imagine them being the kind of people that are like, I only read Pulitzer Prize winning books. You know what I mean? I only read things that are incredibly literary. And fine, if that's your jam, good for you, but also don't yuck our yum. This is not like a trashy Harlequin novel. Like what?
Yeah.
Like
I thought that was hilarious.
it's
But
just
like
so elitist.
she also, these are real emotions that people probably
Yeah.
felt in the fucking war. Like
Yeah,
what?
exactly. Exactly. I'm like, you have never lived through a war. You have no idea what it's like to have your husband taken from you, and he's often don't know if he's dead or
Yeah.
alive. You're
Yep.
starving. There's a German officer living in your home. Like,
What? Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Okay. Moving on to my next 5-star. This is from Haley in Bookland. I've been told by so many people that I need to read this book. It gets so much hype that I thought there was absolutely no way it would live up to it. But it did more than that. It surpassed it. My favorite books is a pretty exclusive list, and it usually takes me a while to decide whether a book fits that list or not. But this was an instant favorite. I absolutely adored it. Even just thinking about it now, I am fighting back tears because this was such a beautiful and vivid story. I felt like I was with these characters through all of their terrible experiences, and I just wanted to shelter them from it all. The women in particular, the sisters, were absolutely inspirational. They showed incredible strength in this terrible time, and I loved seeing how women contributed to the war. This was just a story that really resonated with me. It has a special place in my heart, for it was truly beautiful. If you like World War II historical fiction, or even if you don't, I encourage you to try this book out. I know I'm going to be encouraging basically everyone I know to read it. Yeah. Thanks, Haley. Well said.
You're gonna hate this next one, but I had to put it in here.
Oh boy. Okay. Here we go.
It's a really short one.
Okay.
It's from Michelle. It's like the Twilight of World War II books with Nazis instead of vampires, cliched writing, cliched characters, cliched themes.
What? I have never been more offended in my life because we all know how I feel about Twilight, and how dare they compare this book to Twilight? That is just like sacrilege. Get out.
I don't understand the comparison.
Don't
Like,
either. Wait, so she said the Nazis are vampires, so that makes like
Nazis instead of vampires.
Vianne and Isabelle are Bella and I.
Yeah, I don't.
It doesn't make sense because it's stupid. It's stupid. We're gonna move right along. Okay. Next 5-star from Chelsea Humphrey. I'm not sure what I can say about this book that hasn't already been said, but the quality and sheer excellence to this story blew my mind. I'm not typically a fan of historical fiction, which is likely why I've avoided it for so long. But once this was described to me as, quote, historical fiction light, quote, I felt it was safe to take a gamble on it. When we decided for this to be the suspenseful clues and thrilling reviews September book choice, I was nervous because what if I hated this beloved book? Clearly, this is a World War II saga, but at heart, I felt this was a variety of love stories. Sure, there was romance, but I'm talking about the love for people, the love for a country, and the love for fighting for all that is good and right. It'll be a while before I can pick up another emotional read because I don't know how I'll ever recover from this one. Please, even if, like me, you steer clear of historical fiction and love stories, do yourself a favor and pick this up. Yeah, this is obviously I recommended it to you. This is a book I would recommend to people who normally don't read historical fiction because I do think it is very accessible. I don't think it's too dense or too dry.
Yeah.
And it does, like we said, it shines light on an experience like Vianne's that we don't see very often. So I will keep recommending it.
This is my final review
Okay.
from Jacqueline.
Okay.
I know this book is beloved, but I don't understand why. I found the writing to be strained, trite, ridiculously sentimental, cliched, and full of adjectives. The use of French words is hilarious. Sure, the story is compelling and it highlights the role women played in the French resistance, but the writing is terrible. I say read Life After Life, The Story of Erin, or All the Light We Cannot See if you want some historical fiction. Have you read those books?
I've read All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. Oh my God. Love that so much. I don't know if I'm going to make you read it on the podcast, but you should read it. I do think it is better written than this book. Like has a stronger like command of the language, and his work is a little bit more literary, but not in a way that's again like dense and confusing and whatever. But it is a beautiful book. There's actually a Netflix series as well. I haven't seen it.
Just seeing it.
Yeah, but it's so good. Highly recommend it. Also, listeners, recommend that to you. If you read The Nightingale with us and you liked it, go on and you're ready for all the things we cannot see. Like you're ready for it. Okay, my last one's a little bit longer because it does dive into a little bit of the history of that young woman that I was talking about that the Nightingale is based on. And so I wanted to give some space in the podcast for some historical information. So here we go. This is my last 5-star from Angela M. I almost didn't read this book, and it would have been my loss if I didn't, because I would have missed out on knowing Isabelle and Vianne and the story of their indescribable bravery and volition to save lives in their roles in the French resistance during World War II. Oh, I know this is a work of fiction and these two women are characters in a novel, but I also know, as history tells us, there were real men and women risking their lives doing the very same things Isabelle and Vianne did. Our recent article tells how Hannah based the story on real events and real people. The subject of, quote, the subject of the Nightingale was an outgrowth of research Hannah had done for her earlier novel, Winter Garden, which actually that's one I haven't read yet, when she came across information about a resistance heroine, the 19-year-old Belgian woman, André de Jong. This brave teenager, inspired in turn by the earlier World War I heroine, Edith Cavell, established the Comet Escape Line, a secret network of people who risked their lives to help Allied servicemen escape over the Pyrenees to Spain. De Jong's story inspired Hannah to conduct further research into the French resistance, finding stories about women who had put themselves and their children in peril by hiding Jewish families. And De Jong became the model for Isabelle, the younger sister who, as the Nightingale, personally led downed Allied pilots over the mountains to safety, unquote. This story is all-encompassing in many ways, depicting not only the war, the Holocaust, the suffering and starvation, the death, the concentration camps, the emotional, physical, and mental toll on people, and the unrelenting will of the people in the resistance. We see the depth of friendship between Vianne and Rachel, a mother's or father's love for their children, and the sacrifices they will make to save them, with Vianne and Sophie and with Julian and Isabelle. And we see the raw innocence of first love that becomes a deeper love with Isabelle and Gaetan. I almost didn't read this because I had previously read 2 other books by Hannah, one of which I loved and one that I didn't, but I could not continue to ignore the 4 and mostly 5-star ratings that so many of my Goodreads friends gave this book. These are friends who are drawn to the same books that I have loved. I'm glad I paid attention to them. My Goodreads friend Evelyn said that by the end of the book, she couldn't breathe. I think that she described the feeling perfectly. I wonder why it is that the books that make me feel like I can't breathe are the ones that I love the most. I think it's because these books evoke the feelings that make us human. In this case, it is a story that begs us to remember what happened. I couldn't recommend it more. So yeah, I like that one because it does give you a little bit more historical context about who she was basing these characters on and what was going on. But yeah, love this book. I'm so glad you liked it as well.
Oh man, this reminded me of one last thing that we didn't
Yeah.
really mention.
Okay.
Was Rachel's child, right?
Ari.
Ari,
Yes.
who becomes Daniel
Mhm.
throughout the book. And then at the end of the book,
Mhm. Yeah.
he's taken from Vianne
Mhm.
and moves to the US with
Mhm.
some distant family.
Mhm.
And the reasoning behind it was like the people gathering all of the lost or orphaned Jewish children, they
Mhm.
wanted them with their Jewish families,
Yeah.
which makes sense. But then they did not allow Vianne to know him throughout his life
Yeah.
or for him to know his history
Yeah.
with this woman. And I feel
Yeah.
like that was, I'm wondering if that was
Mhm.
like common
Yeah.
or what the reasoning was behind that.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then at the very end of the book, she's reunited with Ari
Yeah.
as an old man. And
Yeah.
he had been looking for her for his
A
whole
long
life
time.
and he
Mhm.
never forgot them,
Yeah.
which was heartbreaking.
Yeah. I do. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot about that. Yeah. Because she was like his surrogate mom essentially for a while after
Yes.
Rachel was taken and she was raising him essentially. And then
Mm-hmm.
to have that severed and to never see him again and not know what happened. And
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I don't know actually what the
Mm-hmm.
process or protocols were around those like orphan kids and like
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if he didn't have family, if they would have allowed him to stay, or if they would have been like, no, he needs
Sure.
to grow up in a Jewish home and
Mm-hmm.
in a Jewish community. I don't know. That's a great question. And listeners, if you know, you could comment on this episode and let us
You
know.
could.
Okay, Kelsey, do you want to take us through our socials?
Yeah. Well, ultimately, in the end, yes, I do recommend
Oh,
it
I guess,
for
yeah, we didn't do
people.
our final recommendations.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like the type of reader that I would recommend this to, but I don't know. I've read a lot of
I
people.
Yeah, I think in some ways it is historical fiction light, and not because,
Hmm.
contrary to what the one star folks were saying, I don't think it's because it's like cliched. I just think her style of writing, I just say that it's accessible. I don't want to say that she's dumbed down her writing or anything, but I think it's easily accessible. And I think regardless of whether or not you're a historical fiction buff, I think a lot of the themes in this story will resonate with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just a
Yeah.
well-told story. Like,
Hmm.
so I would also, of course, recommend it.
So yes, socials. You can find us on Instagram at litvibesonly_podcast and TikTok and YouTube at litvibesonly podcast. And of course, now you can find us on Fable. Both Amanda and I are Lit Vibes Only Pod dash Kelsey or dash Amanda.
Hmm.
And you can find us there and join our book clubs
Yay.
and start to vote on the books that we end up reading each month. So that's been exciting. I've been enjoying having
Yeah.
folks choose the book.
Yeah. And also just like it's another great way for us to connect with all of you and
Yeah.
for you to have a say in the content we're
Mm-hmm.
making.
Totally. Yeah. Of course, always go rate and review our podcast on Spotify and Apple. And also, you can download the podcast if you don't want to rate and review. That also gives us a lot of life. And yeah, that's how they determine whether or not people listen to our podcast.
Yeah. And it bumps us up in what level we are as podcasters on these
Yeah.
platforms. It goes by the number of downloads. So the more we get, like, the more, I'm trying to think of the right word, I guess, exposure we
Things
get.
we have.
So similar to ratings and reviews. So
Yeah.
we know it takes up space on your phone, but if you download it, you can listen to it and then you can delete it after you've listened to it.
Totally.
Thank you guys for joining us for yet another Lit or Quit It episode. We hope you enjoyed it and we'll see you next Monday.